It's so hard to get those. So I'd be like, yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, committee members and other parties of interest. This evaluation committee meeting is to receive the consultant's analysis presentation for request for proposals RFP-25-00033 for fully insured disability benefits for the Human Resources Department. It's being held by means of communication media technology as well. Provisions have been made for members of the public desiring to have access to view the meeting as well, and public attendees must remain on mute and with the cameras off. For the record, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has ended. Please be advised that the cone of silence is still in effect and shall remain in effect until the earlier of either 5 business days after the county posts a notice of intent to award the contract associated with the solicitation, or on the date the procurement solicitation is canceled by the county. All questions, comments, concerns must be directed to my attention and my attention only. As a matter of housekeeping, if we have we do have one technical advisor or observer online. So if you're in attendance via that way on the media technology, please mute your audio as well. Unless you need to speak, and turn your cameras off as well. My name is Sakina Ford, and I'm the chief buyer for this project. And again, for the record, this meeting is being recorded. At this time, I'll ask each committee member to introduce themselves for the record, beginning with our committee chair, Tom Thesler.
Thesler, Chief Financial Administrator.
Donna Stark, Senior Functional Business Analyst, Enterprise Solutions and Quality Assurance. Terry Arias, Health and Workers' Comp and Personal Manager.
This is Ricky, Director of Management Budget.
Thomas Johnston, HR Partner, Occupational Health and Lead.
And I'll go ahead and let everybody else in from the county introduce themselves.
Christy Alessino, Procurement Operations Coordinator.
Paul Almeida, Contracts Manager for HR.
Terry, if you could introduce yourself one more time, it's not catching you on the recording, so.
Yeah, Terry Arias. I'm the manager of the Workers' Comp and Personal Occupational Health section.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so for the record, we did receive 3 proposals, and those proposals were from MetLife, OCHS Inc. on behalf of Madison National Life, and the Standard. The committee is going to receive analysis presentation from the Baldwin Group, the county's consulting firm, based on the information that was provided in the responses as it correlates to the requirements and criteria set forth in the solicitation. The criteria was as follows. Criteria 1 was the pricing and discounts, the monthly premium rates proposed. Criteria 2 was proposers' understanding of the scope and objectives, technical approach, and work plan presented. That's the design match, design enhancements, questionnaire responses, provider network, rate guarantees and max caps, deviations or exclusions, interface capabilities, reporting capabilities, and billing. Category 3, proposers' organization, qualifications, and experience. Their general information, experience, qualifications, and client references. And then there's a category 4, which is the DWBE bonus points, which is scored by the Economic Development Department. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to the Baldwin Group and have them introduce themselves first, and then go ahead and get started with their presentation.
Sure. Jamie Lowe, Senior Client Manager of the Baldwin Group. Jean Kelly, Client Executive Leader of the Baldwin Group. Nicole Riesbecky, Managing Director of the Baldwin Group.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump right in, and I just want to a couple things to note. First, we're going to start with the brief executive summary, and then what we tried to do after the first page of the executive summary was summarize the disability comparison spreadsheet. That was the questions that you were asking around billing, administration, plan design, etc. We then can move into any kind of review of the plan design itself. However, as I'm going to touch on in the executive summary, that may or may not be necessary. Okay. The other thing I want to note is Sakina mentioned that what the scoring was based on, 50% was actually on the actual price itself. The rate guarantee section is actually falling in that proposer's ability to do you know, the work you've asked them to do, which is the separate bucket of 45. That does come into play when we discuss some of this executive summary. Does that sound good? Awesome. Okay, well, what I was thinking of doing, even though I have this alpha by actual carrier, so Madison, Met, and the standard, I'm actually going to go backwards for this because I'm going to use the standard as the reference point, and then the differences, MetLife and OCHS as well. Okay, so when we look at the overall plan design, the standard as is matching current plan design, no material deviation. From a rate guarantee perspective, so again, this is that second part of the bucket, not the actual pricing. They're offering you a 36-month rate guarantee. So for the next 3 years, they've promised those rates. What they are also doing is adding a rate cap for future years. So for 2 years after your initial renewal cycle, they are going to offer you a 7% rate cap. Then the last 5 years, they're giving you a 9% rate cap. Where that is important is they're not guaranteeing that it's going to be 7 or 9%, but they're saying their renewal will be no greater than. Given that you are a fully insured program, right, they're basically saying you're going to have some consistency within the rates that you're going to pay for the 10-year time period of the contract. They are also offering waiver of premium. Your RFP question asked if you would provide waiver of premium on both the long-term disability and the short-term disability. Short-term disability is not something that we usually see waiver of premium. So they're just confirming that they will offer that on your LTD, not your short-term disability. Waiver of premium is basically a clause in your contract that states if you go out on disability, they're going to keep that person still active and on your plan, right, as somebody receiving benefits, but they're not going to charge you the premium for them. And then if we just look at the estimated annual premiums, I'm going to just highlight here, I do need to make one note. We do have a rate page breakout here. We standardize, so if you're looking at the proposal from the carrier, just know that we had to take the volume, right, because LTD and STD premiums are charged on a volume basis. We needed to normalize that across all 3 carriers because there were slight deviations in volume, which is natural and to be expected. But to truly get an estimated annual premium, we wanted to show their rates to one common volume. That makes sense?
That's a question on the rate
Yeah.
guarantee. So the
Yeah.
7% rate cap for the next 2 years, is that 7%, each year? Or
Yeah,
7%?
No, each year. They're saying each year. So they're saying basically at year 4, they're going to review your claims experience and they're going to give you a rate increase no greater than 7% for those 3 years. And then the last 5 years, that's going to go to 9% rate cap.
I didn't understand that then. So,
I'm sorry.
so when in year 4 could go up 7%.
Yep.
Can year 5 go up another 7%?
Correct. But there are no guarantees
So
from the
it
other
could be
proposers.
14%. for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right. And then for the last 5 years, they're saying 9% a year.
I do think it's important to point out that historically speaking, your loss ratio has been over 100%, meaning the having a rate cap is beneficial because the loss ratio, when it's upside down, you're going to look to return the profit. So having some protection when you're running hot from a claims perspective versus the others that have no guarantee on that amount. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so when we look at the estimated annual employer premiums, I also just want to point out that this is employer premium. You do have a buy-up plan. I have excluded that from the purposes of this summary. However, when we get into the rate page, you will see how those rates stack up as well. And then one thing I did want to point out with the standard is that your next closest financial offer, if you take into the savings from their estimated premiums, it's about a 467 annual savings over the course of the first 3 years. Okay. If we turn our attention to MetLife, again, there are no material plan design deviations. They did point out some deviations in their proposal that we have in the back of here. They're not material, but I am happy to review those with you as we get to the end of the presentation. For the most part, your employees, your colleagues are not going to see a change in benefit plan design with any one of these carriers. Okay. MetLife is also offering a 36-month rate guarantee. And they are also giving you the waiver for premium as requested on the LTD, again, not on the short-term disability. And their estimated annual premiums is 6.7. If we go over to the offer from Madison Life, it was again provided by OHCHS. And we just wanted to point out, with this proposer specifically, that the name of the proposer does not match the name on the AM Best because you are basically going through a third party to get the Madison Life benefits. So that's important because, you know, you would not have a direct contract with the person providing the benefits. You are contracted with OCHS and the service administration, any kind of escalated issues that you would typically now go to directly to the carrier, you would be going through their service center. And if you were able to look through their proposal, that was very clear in the roles and responsibilities that your contract is with them. And then they would go to Madison Life on your behalf.
I think it's important to point out here too, that this is a deviation from what was asked in the RFP. The RFP very specifically asked for an AM best rating for the responder.
They are also offering the 36-month rate guarantee. The waiver of premium, again, provided on LTD only. And then as mentioned, customer support is coming through OCHS. And then lastly, they are right in the middle of your two other proposers from a pricing perspective, and they are at 6.3 million in estimated annual premium. Any questions on that before we move to the deviations that were outlined in the administrative part of the proposal? Awesome. Okay, so again, further in this presentation, there are let me see the page that it starts. Page 11. Oh, I think, anyway, it's Robinson that says plan design, right?
Yep.
Oh, no, I mean, this is the administrative disability comparison. What we've done here is summarized all of that. And what we thought would be most effective and a time savings for you guys is to highlight where they said they couldn't do what you asked them to do. Okay, so for the most part, there were many, many questions where all the proposers are saying, yes, we can do that, and it's spelled out on your terms, right? So what we're doing here is just highlighting where there was a deviation from that. And then you guys can then make the determination, is that something that is a non-negotiable for you, or is it workable for you? And again, I'm going to start with the standard because there are fewer deviations and work ourselves across. So if we're starting with that, they did respond no to offering a direct deposit of benefits, but they also clarified that they can do it on LTD. They just aren't doing it on short-term disability, and that they're issuing weekly checks there. The other response that got a no from the standard was that you had asked if there would be the same claims examiner for short and long-term disability. They don't do that, but we did want to pause and take a minute and explain that. And then we can address the two carriers in that regard right now. So best claims practice for disability management is to have two different examiners for short and long-term disability. Short-term disability is a higher volume disability review process, and you tend to have a less experienced disability examiner. When you move to the long-term disability, you're going to have more seasoned disability examiners, and they're going to have a lower volume of work, right? Because they are typically more complex cases. So we do believe that this is the standard, right, of how you should be managing disability programs. Now we can certainly see, is there an effectiveness of having one person doing both? Does it make it more seamless? In general, you want more experienced folks on your long-term disability claim. Now I say that only to point out that both MetLife and Madison Life said that they could provide the same claims examiner if you really wanted. If these proposers were of more interest to you at the end of the total evaluation, it's not to say that they can't give you one examiner. It's just saying that they've listed that they will give you one. Okay. The standard also said no, that they don't have service level agreements for issues when reported. They have also said that they will not provide resources to develop integration codes between Oracle and receiving systems. It's important to note, though, that that is a no across the board. So none of the respondents can do that for you. And then the last one was they will not allow the client to provide provide the requirements for the format layout of client data. It's important to note that that is also one that none of the proposers can provide. Okay, so that's going to kind of button up the standards deviations from what you've asked them to do. Now we can move on to MetLife. And how much you guys want to go into this, but I will just, an overview. They are not going to be providing W-2 statements to all claimants. Responding no to paying FICA for the first 6 months of a disability. That is both MetLife and Madison Life are not doing that, but the standard will do that. MetLife was not going to evaluate STD claims on a monthly basis. And then I've already mentioned the integration question as well as the integration codes. And that one, will not allow client data requirements for you're not going to choose the layout of the client data. And that is all for the MetLife deviations from the purposes of your questionnaire. If we move over to OHCS, there are significantly more deviations. So we've got 2 pages of deviations. So I'm just going to run through some of the ones that are different from the ones already discussed, if that's all right. They're not going to be able to file claims electronically. However, they go on to clarify that they can be filed online, mail, fax, or email. But STD, that's LTD, STD claims are filed telephonically. Again, no FICA reporting. Are not going to transition the LTD claim at 5 months of STD. And they will also not provide details on any reasons for denial in their claims reporting. They have also said that they will not provide a designated claims contact to serve as the county's sole contact. So I think that might have some to do with you're working with a team of people over at OCHS. But they're not going to give you one dedicated claims person. You will have a team of folks there. They will not be able to feed data down. We mentioned this other one. They also do not have an integration discrepancy reporting or file error methodology. We've already mentioned that next one. And then they're not going to provide copies of all CETA discrepancy ports, logos, and notifications. So those are the main, go ahead.
Just to stay on one point of clarification on
Sure.
the CHS and Madison Life, they actually don't have an integration at all. They use the self bill to determine what the enrollments are. I mean, pros and cons, less maintenance for the county, but the con would be from a processing perspective, anybody responding to the short-term and long-term disability claims in the county, we have to always go back and verify address, demographics, pay, that kind of stuff, whereas now the interface takes care of that. So just wanted to make a mention of that, because that's pretty, that's pretty odd.
Would be a significant change.
Yeah, that'd be a big change.
So any questions on that? Because I think what we could do here, again, the benefits for the most part, the proposer said, we're going to match your benefit plan design as well as your definitions, right? So here we just call out your class definition and eligibility. That is going to be the same across all carriers. As we look first at the short-term disability benefit plan design, all of the proposers are going to match that benefit plan design. Especially in short-term disability with no deviations. They're matching your pregnancy benefits, offering 8 weeks at C-section. The earnings definition is the same across the board. They're looking at salary only to determine the rate of payment. And then again, you'll see those rate guarantees, 36 months across all carriers, with the standard then providing you that rate cap guarantee for future renewals. As we move to long-term disability, again, I just want to make mention that they have said they're going to match your plan designs as is. So there's going to be very limited disruption to any of that. And then if we get back to that, you'll also see, again, the 36-month rate guarantee and no rate cap provided, but all other benefits matching similarly. One thing that we do want to just add, your current provider is the standard. Should we deviate from that carrier, we are going to have to fill it with an actively at work provision, right? Where we're just saying, okay, these employees are at work or are not actively at work at the time of the new contract. So we just want to be mindful of that, because what we want to do is ensure that their coverage was guaranteed by the standard if we were moving. If we were to go with the standard, we would likely still go through that process, but it's less important because there's not a changing carrier and they are likely aware that you've got employees that are not actively at work. The next page is just the rates and estimated annual premium. Again, what we've shown you here are the rates as listed in the RFP. And then just to bring some consistency, we use the FTE volume that was basically a blending of those three proposers. You're always going to have a slight variation in volume, right? Based on employee salary, their actively at work status, et cetera. So if we're looking at the short-term disability rate, you've got here is where MetLife is a little less, right? At 0.849, that's your best rate. The standard at 0.89, and then OHCS is at 0.927. And then you'll see that's where we're getting our annual premiums there. If we move down to the LTD rates, you'll see that the standard is the standard and OHCS are pretty close on LTD rates. Coming in, LTD rate class for class 1 is 0.56 for the standard. Rate class 2, the standard is 0.17. The buy-up rate, which we did not include in those estimated annual premiums on the executive summary, is 0.47. This gives you, again, taking your short-term disability and your long-term disability, excluding the employee paid portion of the LTD. That's where we come up with our 6.1 for the standard. In this scenario, your employees are going to pay roughly $32,000 a year for those buy-up premiums. Looking over at MetLife LTD rates, they're at 0.745, 0.219, and the buy-up at 0.625. So coming down again, we get that blended annual premium of employer paid dollars at 6.7, and then your employees, your colleagues would then pay 43 grand in their buy-up premium. And then lastly, we can look at Madison Life on behalf of, or OHCS on behalf of Madison Life. And we've got 0.56, 0.165, and 0.47. When we blend that with the higher short-term disability premium is where we're seeing that delta and the 6.3 million in estimated annual employer dollars. And then they have matched the standard rates on, or their rates are the same on the buy-up class 2, and that's another 42,000. The rates, rate guarantees, benefits. Okay, great. Again, the next section here is really just a call out of all of the questions you asked in the disability comparison. And then here's where we're calling out where there was a deviation in response. Now, again, we've already tried to review that for you. I don't know if you want to go through these line by line, if you feel that's necessary. No,
Just to call out, it's the font that's in red, that's where the differences are. It's not this entire section.
oh, right. Good clarification, Jamie. So again, if you've got questions on that, we are happy to answer, but we did try and clarify that. MetLife did have some deviations real quick. And that is slide page showing page 28. This is, these are really intricate kind of differences within the plan design. I'm happy to review those for you if that would be helpful. The first one is basically, well, oh, I'm sorry, it's this page deviation. Like
28 on the bottom left, underneath the grid.
Sorry, it's so small, like when you start.
Well, they also don't go in order, which is strange. 13 to
No, that's,
28.
Oh.
no, that's,
Well, no, that might be part of
Okay.
the confusing part.
okay. So again, there were slight deviations and I'll just note, when we looked and if we're looking at, proposers' understanding of scope and like, are there significant design enhancements? I would say across the board in general, there's no significant design enhancements. We didn't go out there and say, oh, show us a bigger benefit or show us a higher maximum or anything like that. But I will make mention of the number one for MetLife. I'll summarize this as best as I can, is that they're just saying we don't use maximum capacity estimations. Maximum capacity in general is when somebody's in that interim time of being kind of partially disabled, not yet fully disabled, and working maybe some hours per week. The current contract is stating that they're gonna just average that. If you are capable of working 30 hours a week, they're gonna assume you're working 30 hours a week and make the appropriate payment based on that. MetLife is saying here that it would require a filing for your colleague employee that was actually on partial disability to actually tell them how many hours they're working, and then they would make the offset based on that. And then the other deviation that I think is of note, because the other two aren't truly, we wouldn't really look at those as deviations, it's more just like a change in language, but this one is basically saying that if there is a STRS or PERS or FERS retirement program in place, and if there's any kind of delay in getting some income from that, the MetLife is going to go back retroactively and ask for any kind of overpayment, right? In your current arrangement, they're filing and submitting what they're getting there, or they're making an estimation of what that amount would be. Those are the big deviations and the big things we wanted to touch on. Is there anything that you want to go back and hit a little more, or review on some of these items as far as it goes from scoring? I know scoring is technically on Friday, which Christy might be addressing the scoring questions. Because I think you've got 2 meetings scheduled, but we'll go ahead and take a pause there. There additional information we can provide for you to help with scoring.
Scoring price, is that something we need for, or is that just an automatic calculation?
The price is part of everybody's scoring. Yes, it's part of the 50. I believe.
But that's not
Hang on.
plugged into your standard calculation, like a bid or something.
It's not a bid table because of the complexity of the pricing.
Yeah.
So it would be something that you as a committee would be scoring.
Yes.
I think when you're thinking about scoring, though, I think it's important to think about from the purpose of, are we getting like or equal for the same or best price? And there's very clear ranking here, or very similar plan designs. There, we pointed out there are some deviations, right? But there is a clear 1, 2, and 3 from a price perspective when you look at apples to apples as far as covered payroll, covered volume, the percentage of payout for disability benefits, and then you can easily rank 1, 2, and 3 based off of the numbers. And then go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think where it might get a little more complex is in that second bucket where there's an element of pricing still included, right? Which is that rate guarantee period.
And that's kind of why we couldn't make a formula for you that would automatically calculate. So it becomes incumbent upon you as the committee to decide a score there. If you don't have any questions for Baldwin, or while you're chewing on that for a moment, we're going to talk about next steps. So initially, when we scheduled meetings, we had scheduled meetings with the ability that you might want oral presentations. We determined that wasn't going to be necessary. So right now, we have not cleared your schedule for Friday. We kind of left it all booked up. And we're thinking Friday morning, if you're all comfortable with that, we would keep that meeting, cancel the Friday afternoon meeting, and the Friday morning meeting would be your final scoring meeting. And that would be, you would be able to take what these ladies have presented here, take one last glance through everything, and then be prepared Friday to have your conversation as a committee for scoring purposes. And then we would go through scoring, and that would determine who your highest rank proposer is to proceed to the board for award and negotiations.
And we did set aside that in that morning session, 3 hours, if necessary, or if for whatever reason you didn't think that was enough. Again, we had that extra meeting there just in case.
Does anybody have any questions?
Understand that second pricing.
The rate cap. Okay. So for the first 3 years, your rate is locked in, all those rates shown.
Regardless of how your performance runs, right? So
Correct.
regardless of what your loss ratio is, whether the plan's running out of goals.
That's right. You are locked in. You're not going to see an increase in those first 3 years. The rate cap guarantee is coming in year 4 and 5, right? So in year 4 and 5, they're saying that the maximum rate increase you can receive, I forgot, I think it's 7, right? Is 7%. So regardless of your claim experience, the most they're going to increase your rate in year 4 is 7% over these rates shown here. In year 5, same thing. So let's say you get a 7% rate increase in year 4, they're going to take that as the starting point for year 5, and the most they're going to increase you is another 7%. For the last 5 years of your contract, they're applying that same principle and process and just saying the rate cap is now 9%. And that is regardless of how you run. But again, I want to point out, that's not a guarantee of that, right? If you are running better than they would want, and you do get experience, so we are able to help justify what renewals should be like. Let's say you won great. They're not saying you're getting 7%. They're saying the max they'll give you is 7. So it just provides you a level of stability through what is a pretty long contract period in contract time.
For the other, go ahead.
Can we speak about historical data at all, or?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
so just to kind of put that into perspective, I know that we talked about the disability has been running hot these past few years. Without that rate cap being in place for, what is the word I'm looking for that protection, this past year, the long-term disability, for example, that received a 19% increase. So with having those rate caps in place, it's going to guarantee or support a smaller renewal increase than what might be warranted.
Yeah, I would say historically speaking, year over year, the experience has justified a higher increase than these rate caps have offered protection for. So the absence of those with some of these other carriers would be the full increase.
So all three are locked in for 3 years. It's just,
That is
the
correct.
main difference is that one of them.
Beyond. Well, all three are locked
Right.
in for 3 years, but
Right.
one of them is at a much better rate, about a $450,000
That's over the course of the 3 years.
over the course of the 3 years.
But I was gonna say you've asked for a longer contract than 3 years.
Yeah.
So you've asked for that 10-year contract. So I don't know if procurement could speak to it. At the end of 3 years, you got a terrible increase, what it would look like to attempt to get out of that 10-year contract.
But we also then know worst case scenario for the next 10 years,
That's right.
as far as the employer cost would be, potentially.
And that's negotiated, so come the 4th year, they say, hey, we want 7, and then we could justify that.
Absolutely,
We don't
Terry.
feel
Definitely.
satisfied through-
As a consultant, somebody's looking at your experience, we're looking at your experience and saying, that makes sense or that doesn't.
That's right.
Yeah, and they'll show us, and we've done that in past years where behind the scenes, they're like, hey, we think it calls for this. And we're like, What about this?
Yeah.
You got that on another.
It's always up for negotiation.
Yes.
It's just nice to have that level of protection.
And the other ones, they can say, is it negotiated with them too? If they end up saying, hey, we're gonna increase it 19%.
Absolutely. It's always negotiable. That's right.
But it's hands down, full stop, always negotiable. However, there are times where in the negotiation, they say, no, that's as far as we're willing to go. When you have experience that justifies a 20% increase, knowing that the most they can offer is 7.
Right, especially considering where that starting point may be with one of these other carriers outside of that 3-year rate guarantee.
What was the 450,000?
Over the course, so if this page 3, if you look at the standards proposed rate compared to your closest next competitor, proposer, over the 3 years, the difference in those 3 years is 467K.
Okay,
So roughly 100 and some odd K a year
okay.
delta.
Okay.
Some odd K, very technical, that's very technical math.
Very
right
efficient
there.
term.
Yeah, sorry. Well, it's like 150, yeah. One less than. It's just, yeah.
Possibilities. It was kind of difficult to see if they would. It seems like they were gonna be recommending what we need to provide, like ergonomically or a desk, or a chair or whatever, but it doesn't seem like they would pay for it. It was recommendations
You have a $25,000 reasonable accommodation expense in there
for the standard.
for all of them.
For all of
They
them,
did
okay.
match
They
that.
did,
Yeah,
okay.
we did look, well, I will say for one proposer, they didn't come out and spell it. We had to ask several times to get to it, but they did finally
Okay.
tell us that, yeah. So it's a reasonable accommodation expense and you've got $25,000. Yeah. I should have called that one out. Thank you, Terry.
Trying to make sure everybody has a chance to digest a little bit. Also keep in mind, these ladies will be back on Friday.
Yeah, if you needed time to digest and like do some homework and sit on it, we can open up the scoring with conversation, Q&A, and then move into scoring.
Correct. We don't want you to feel pressured to have to digest all of it and get your questions.
Kristen, can I ask a question on that? If they do have a question after we've left today, is it possible for us to get that prior to Friday?
No, maybe.
No.
In the sunshine.
I have a question. What is a no loss, no gain provision?
They're basically just saying that, if going from one contract to another, somebody's out on disability, there's going to be like a no loss, no gain, like they're not gonna get more than, but they're not gonna get less than.
Let me rephrase that. If somebody has a question that we think that the Baldwin Group needs to prepare for, we can filter questions to them and then they can present that information on Friday if necessary. and
Okay,
Clarify.
So
that.
you have questions from the evaluators during the week, and then you'll send it to.
Yeah, I just can't filter questions back and forth that are not in the sunlight.
And just to confirm, what we have now is that if somebody is out of leave, and then they came back, they've been back for 87 days, and then they go back out again, they pick up where they left off, so the other ones agree.
That's right. That's part of your benefit.
Have to sign.
And nobody's given us an indication that they would not do that. Yeah.
Looking for good for now? Yeah.
Give you some time, to adjust.
I think we got new glasses. So.
So with no more, oh, sorry. With no more questions, we'll go ahead and close out this meeting, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the recording. Again, a reminder that we are still in the cone of silence until the recommendation for award is posted or the solicitation is canceled. So just make sure everything's coming through me through the system, any questions or concerns, and we will work on that. If you do have questions that you feel Baldwin is going to need a little bit more time to work on, please make sure we get those as early as possible. Otherwise, you can bring any extra questions and deal with that on Friday. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out the recording now, and we are good to go. Thank you all for attending and for assisting.
Thank you. Christy, I'm sorry, one thing, I know it's small, but if I can email it to you, it's much more legible. Is that allowable?
I'll leave behind that we have.
Okay, if you like when you look at it on our computer, it's much easier to read. And so if I was able to email it to you, then they could get that comparison. But if it's not allowed, that's fine.
I can distribute something, I just need it for the file, so we wanna send it to
Do
you.
you guys need it electronically?